They say the economy is showing signs of improvement and is stable. Inflation is steady, growth is projected. But if the economy is doing so well, why are groceries so expensive? Why does rent take half your salary? And most importantly, why does payday feel less Dolce Vita and more broke Vita? Let's talk about it. Welcome to Politicking Girlie, where we discuss and comment on politics, the economy, and those who wrecked it. Without BS, just keeping it real. Today, we're talking Economics 101, the real life edition. Since the year has started, you've probably been involved in or heard conversations that began with these questions. What's going on with the economy right now? More specifically, South Africa's economy. How does it actually affect you? And who does the system really serve? Before we get into how the South African economy is doing right now, let's take a quick detour through history, because our crippling economy didn't get here by happenstance. All aboard the economic history train. Pre-10,000 BC, humanity was in hunter-gatherer times. During this time, there was no currency, no bosses, no banks. To survive, people hunted, foraged, and shared. It was all about collective survival and mutual aid. Some might argue this was also the era of survival of the fittest. Around 10,000 BC to 500 AD, it was the early agrarian societies and kingdoms. This was when farming started, land and labor became available. It was also when the emergence of rulers, priests, and landowners began. The era of taxes and tributes started, usually paid in crops or livestock. And unfortunately, for some societies, tributes also came in human form during this time. But I digress. Around ancient to early medieval times, the barter system became a thing. This was when people traded without money. You give me a goat, I give you 10 baskets of maize. The problem was that barter only worked when both people want what the other has. And this unfortunately has changed as civilization has shifted. However, even though it was very dominant during ancient and medieval times, it is still common in villages, rural economies, and among neighbors today. So it's not really too ancient. 500 AD to 1500s, feudalism was in its heyday. The practice of feudalism was common in Europe and parts of Africa. It piggybacks on agrarian societies and kingdoms, but pivots slightly where lords owned land in exchange for military service, and peasants tilled the land as homage and in exchange for military protection. This was also the era where your birth decided your economic status. Does that sound familiar? Slightly overlapping with feudalism, between 1400s to 1700s, we enter mercantilism and colonial era. This was when global trade blew up. Countries competed for gold, silver, and colonies. The goal was to export more than you import. Colonies like South Africa were turned into raw material pipelines for Europe. It was also about power and profit, not people. This laid the foundations for inequality we still feel today. To best illustrate this era, The Invisible Doctrine by George Monbiot and Peter Hutchison by far gives the best account. The Portuguese in the 1420s colonized the uninhabited island of Madeira off the west coast of North Africa. The account goes as, at first, forests on the island were felled to meet the need for timber, which had all but been exhausted in Portugal and was in high demand for shipbuilding. It was after a few decades when they discovered a much more lucrative use of Madeira's land and trees, producing sugar. By the 1470s, this tiny island became the world's biggest source of sugar. The fully commoditized system that the Portuguese created was astonishingly productive. Using slave labor, they were able to produce sugar more efficiently than anyone had ever done before. But something else was new. The amazing speed at which the productivity peaked, then collapsed. Sugar production on the island peaked in 1506. Then it precipitously fell by 80% within 20 years. And how did the colonists react to this? They left. They took the operation to another recently discovered island further south, Sao Tome, 190 miles off the west coast of Central Africa. There, the pattern that had been established on Madeira was repeated. Boom, bust, quit. When sugar production in Sao Tome went bust, the Portuguese moved on again, this time to the coastal lands of Brazil, where their much bigger operations followed the same script. Boom, bust, quit. So, the people of Sao Tome in Brazil, what happened to them? To this day, they still are suffering the effects of boom, bust, quit, which shows in its poverty, inequality, and the struggling economy. Now, pivoting back to the 1800s until today, capitalism, which was fine-tuned by boom, bust, quit, is now our economic system that could do no wrong, so they say. Capitalism's earliest boom and bust days were around the time of the Industrial Revolution. Private individuals owned land, companies, and resources. Success was based on capital, not necessarily a birthright or loyalty, though that did give you an advantage. If you didn't own, you sold your labor, which is common practice today. And most of us, let's be honest, we're selling our labor at a basic subscription fee with premium subscription value, which is really tragic if you really think about it. I know some of you are saying, wait a minute, what about communism? Let's slightly go into Marxism a bit. Communism, the idea took place in the mid-1800s as a direct clapback to the effects of capitalism during the Industrial Revolution. And this is how it fits into the timeline. Around the mid to late 1800s, the idea was introduced mainly by Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels, and the Communist Manifesto was then written in 1848. Communism, the movement or the economic system, took a rise in the early 1900s to 1990s. It gained traction after the Russian Revolution in 1917, then spread to countries like China, Cuba, Vietnam, East Germany, and others, offering through revolutions. Let's talk about what's happening now in our country and honestly, the rest of the world. Though some business people would like you to believe that the South African economy is a socialist or communist experiment, unfortunately for you and me, it is one big capitalistic experiment. And honestly, we are peddling hard work to the promised land of plenty, only to be told that wrong career choice, try influencing, or better yet, OF. And yes, as a country, we have state-owned enterprises, but just take a moment to think if you or your peers have had or your siblings have access to free premium education from basic to tertiary level, like Scandinavian countries or even Germany. Yet no one calls those countries socialist experiments whatsoever. Like Norway, which until recently was also giving free education to international students, was never, ever called to be a socialist experiment. Just putting it out there. The truth is, we are all struggling under this economic system. And I mean all. If you've been on TikTok, YouTube, or Instagram, you know that Canadians, Australians, and Americans are complaining about housing affordability. And if you're in Cape Town, the struggle is real. That's the best best way I could put this. And everyone in the world is complaining about food prices because you may have gotten that 5% increase that places you in the next salary bracket if you're lucky, but inflation and the ever-changing living standards will humble you so hard when you realize that salary on your payslip looks amazing. The numbers are amazing. It looks good. It looks like you've leveled up in life. But you might as well be getting your first job salary when your debit orders go up, because the amount that you have that is left over, your actual disposable income, is a ghost. It's a ghost in your bank account. Yeah. And on paper, as it's reported, South Africa's economy is technically growing, but at less than 1% per year. That is too slow for the economy to create jobs or even improve living standards. Case in point is the example that I just stated about our salaries. And here's the kicker. Even when there is growth, it doesn't reach the people at the bottom or the middle. That means you and I, regular folks, are not even seeing that growth. Again, it's like our salary, like the disposable income. It's a ghost playing peekaboo, except there's no boo. Right now here in South Africa, we're sitting at 46.1% youth unemployment. That is approximately 9.7 million young people who can't find jobs, even those with degrees. And the government and mainstream media, they boast about 200,000 jobs that they've added to the 53.9% employed youth. To put it into perspective, that 200,000 jobs that they're boasting about represents 2% additional employment. That's 2%, but you're doing amazing, sweetie, with your private-public partnership initiatives. And load shedding, when businesses close, the shops can't survive, leaving the big retailers to pass the cost on to you at a whiff of stage 4 blackout. And then when petrol prices goes up, thank God that they went down recently, so but nonetheless, if petrol prices goes up, so does the cost of transport, which unfortunately means that the tomatoes will cost more at the spaza shop than if you were to go to Macro. But don't worry, the Reserve Bank will say it's all within target range, whatever that means for your wallet. Right now, the global economy, including our South African economy, is like a building on fire. Instead of bringing the firefighters to extinguish the fire, like a spy movie, like Mission Impossible, they bring decoys to add more fuel to the fire instead of Ethan Hawke. Or is it Ethan Hunt? That one. And regular people are the ones that are getting burned. Yes, I'm definitely referring to the US trade war and calling out the IMF because they need to be called out. Capitalism loves to market itself as an opportunity for all system. And it doesn't help that its PR heralds the likes of Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, the Kardashians, the Motsepe's, the Ruperts, the Oppenheimers, and the Ramaphosa's, and let's not forget your next door influencer neighbor as success stories. And if that's not enough, the finance bros, podcast bros, and their cats will aggressively shame you. I mean, motivate you with the neoclassics of all you have to do is work harder, be smarter, get the perfect routine, manifest, and the list goes on and on. But in reality, the economic system serves those who already have power, not those that are trying to earn a living. And please don't be fooled by people who tell you that the wealth will trickle down. I think most of us have lived long enough to know that it doesn't trickle down. And should it trickle down, it's all in the name of philanthropy, aka legally avoiding tax. However, in recent years, we've seen the wealth kind of levitates. It levitates and then poof disappears with the UFO. And by UFO, I mean SpaceX or Blue Origin and the rest of them. And what I mean by this is that it gets invested or capitalized into space research as part of the mission to colonize Mars or a politically correct version of all of that. And I don't need to know the future or be a clairvoyant to know that boom bust quid will repeat itself as it's already started when it comes to space. But yeah, now bringing the focus back to South Africa and the overall system, according to the 2020 paper estimating the distribution of household wealth in South Africa, which is authored by Arup Chatterjee, Leon Chaika, and Amaury Gethin. In 2017, the wealthiest 10% of South Africans owned 86% of the wealth, and the bottom 90%, they own 14%. 14%, let that sink in. That is 10% of the wealthiest South Africans owned 86% of the wealth. And this is just an estimate. Just imagine if they actually went in 2025. Just imagine what that statistics would look like. So while you choosing between different data bundles and bread, some guy in Kim's Bay or Constantia just made 500K from a single investment. And it's not just race, though it does give some a very, very mega pint of an advantage. It's a systematic structure from the tenders that go to people that are connected, to the companies that profit off cheap labor or free labor, because that's still happening now. The system is designed to protect profit and not people. And that's why when the economy recovers, it's the stock market, the JEC, that goes up and not your salary or social grant. Perhaps there's no greater example than the workplace to illustrate who the system serves and just how broken it is. Whether you're at a call center, a regular office job, a hospital, or a delivery app, you've probably heard, we don't have the budget for raises. But then the company posts about how much money they made or about a deal they just got and how it wouldn't be possible without their team, yet there's no budget for your salary increase or contribution. Here's how companies typically work. You generate value through hard work and often like tears in the shower after a gym session or after a swim. That value then becomes profit, and that profit is divided, mostly going through executives and investors. And you're getting a cost of living adjustment, and that is if you're lucky, because sometimes we don't have the budget for now. I'm sorry. I've had that quite a bit. And if you ask too many questions, suddenly you're not a culture fit. And let's not forget about the rise of gig economy, where people are technically self-employed but still overworked, underpaid, and have zero benefits. And in most cases, in South Africa, most of the Uber drivers are actually employed by someone and they're not doing this themselves. So it's not really self-employed. So at the end of the day, you're told to be grateful that you have a job, but that job doesn't pay you enough to actually live. Please, someone make it make sense. Seriously. Let's decode the big words. Fiscal policy is the principle or plan the government employs on spending and taxation during certain economic seasons, while monetary policy is the principle or plan for how the Reserve Bank manages interest rates and inflation at certain periods of the economic cycle. So when the government cuts spending, that's called austerity. They are implementing a plan on how they're going to be cutting down on overall spending. As I said, it's called austerity, and it usually affects health, education, public services, and social programs. Regular citizens like you and I are the ones that are struck by it because quality education and health and whatever quality public service we've had becomes a thing of the past. Austerity is always implemented with the expectation that the economy will bounce back after a while and that things will be much more better before austerity measures were implemented. But the reality is quite grim. It never ends up like that. The United Kingdom is a great case study for this. Since Margaret Thatcher, aka the Iron Lady, implemented austerity measures in the UK in 1979, things haven't been quite the same. While her austerity policies somewhat stimulated the economy through heavy privatization, cheap labor, and cheap production from their colonies, this increased overall unemployment and resulted in social unrest and exacerbated income inequality. Unfortunately for the UK, the traces of Thatcherism didn't end when her term ended. In just the past years, there's been Brexit, more social unrest, housing crises, more inequality, which still persists today. To enforce austerity, the government will tell us there's no money. Case in point, the GNU situationship saga with that increase that had everyone tuning in like a global premiere of Taylor Swift's Eras tour. But hey, let's not talk about the billions that disappear in corruption every year. Now, monetary policy, that's the Reserve Bank's jobs. They increase interest rates to fight inflation. But what that really means is your car, credit card, and student loan repayments get more expensive. So you have to spend, so you have less to spend, demand goes up, and prices slow down. That's how technically, theoretically, it will work, and it sounds very clever in theory. But in practice, this often results in prices going up because demand goes down, and then the supply cycle goes up, and because shops need to make more money, then they charge a little bit higher so that they can meet their profit margins. That kind of situation then takes place. And all these policies, all they do, generally speaking, is punish people that are already struggling, while some landlords, some business owners, and all the banks, they're the ones that continue to win off this havoc that continues to make life extra hard. Like, we're not already struggling. And it often than not feels like they are treating a broken leg with a cold compress. They're doing something. You can see they're telling us, you know, we're going to be implementing A, B, C, and D, but in all honesty, it's not doing anything. It's giving, hi, I'm a nice person. And we all know what nice people are like. So, yeah. And we cannot discuss the economy without discussing the IMF and the World Bank. They may seem like the final villain bosses, but if you know how the world works, you know that they're just the cogs that keep the system working. The IMF, the International Monetary Fund, in very basic terms, is the big international reserve bank. They loan money to countries with the condition to adjust macroeconomic balances, which always favor big capitalists in the borrower country. They offer short to medium-term assistance. The World Bank, on the other hand, focuses more on long-term development support, where the loans are given to low and middle-income countries that aim to fight against systematic issues or developmental issues like poverty, and say a country wants to also rebuild their nation. They also come with their conditions that often has implications on policies and environmental effects as trade-offs for their long-term development. The World Bank gives more loan shark vibes. Yeah, that's the best way I could put it. They give a loan shark vibes. The country of Zaire, also known as Democratic Republic of Congo, DRC, serves as a cautionary tale of the World Bank. The country accumulated significant debt from the World Bank. A lot of this, which was blamed on the corruption of the then government and political instability. However, that still didn't stop the World Bank from loaning them more money, despite the continued political instability in DRC. So someone make it make sense, please. And if the DRC is not enough of a cautionary tale, maybe their continued predatory assistance that has led to displacement of communities in Lesotho for the Lesotho Highlands Water Project will serve as another cautionary tale, or maybe projects that have led to environmental damage resulting in deforestation, loss of biodiversity, and pollution will do. Unfortunately, as a country, we have not heeded these cautionary tales because we've not shied away from borrowing money from the IMF and the World Bank before, especially during COVID. As stated, these institutions give loans, but those loans come with exuberant interest and they also attach conditions. And often than not, they want smaller government budgets, meaning that all social programs, any social security is affected. They want market-friendly policies. Everything needs to be privatized in some way or form. And they also want less state ownership or interference. And often than not, borrowing from these institutions, it always feels like you're borrowing money from your rich uncle, but he also gets to decide what you eat, where you go, and who you hang out with. But when we owe money to these institutions, we also lose economic freedom, and political freedom without economic freedom it means nothing in the current scheme of things. And I think what we're experiencing as a country with US aid is a great example of what it means to lose economic freedom at the hands of the IMF, the World Bank, the US, and all of this. And unfortunately, guess who pays for these loans? It's certainly not the CEOs, not the billionaires, and those are the people that are actually benefiting from a lot of these conditions. It's you that pays for it through higher taxes, fewer services, and fewer jobs that were promised when they accepted the loans. From Asian barter trades to billionaire buyouts, from sugar colonies to salary slips that feel like scams, because it really does feel like a scam, it's clear that the economy isn't just about numbers. It's more than a headline. It's about power. And power, it's been playing musical chairs, and the rest of us are stuck without a seat, despite them selling us democracy as power in the hands of the people. The system wasn't built to serve you. But knowing that, that's power too, because once you understand the story behind your struggle, the fuel hikes, the food prices, the solutions that are delulu in the budget speech, you stop blaming yourself and you start questioning everything. So next time they say the economy is growing or resilient, ask, for whom? Take it to your political party constituency office. Take it to your political party constituency office for discussion, because before a bill or a policy is implemented, it is supposed to come down from national government to your local political party constituency office and reach the constituents to confirm that, yes, we agree, no, maybe change that, amend that one. But ask yourself, when was the last time that has happened? Let's be honest, most of us often than not, I hear these things on the radio, and by the time we hear about them, it's already too late because some company has lobbied for it to pass. And in case you're wondering, lobbying is illegal in South Africa and it's considered corruption. But don't tell that to the white monopoly capitalists or AfriForum. Until we stop treating the economic policy and the economy as a whole as if it's something that is above regular people, the system will keep making you feel like you're the problem. And we're not anti-heroes here. The biggest takeaway, I would say that real growth isn't just in GDP stats, as we often told. It's a great indication, but real growth is whether or you and your neighbor can eat, live, learn, and rest without drowning in debt and burnout. That's real growth. It's tangible, you can see it. If this video made you feel seen and heard, drop a comment and let us know how you're really doing, because you matter. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video with a friend who thinks economics isn't their business, because honey, the economy is our business. This is Politicking Girlie, and the only thing trickling down around here is the tea. Catch you on the next one. Ciao.